Hello, good morning, class. Good day. I hope that you are doing well, that you are all fine today. This is your instructor in introduction to uh, development communication, CDC 111 for all first year development communication students enrolled in SPAMAS. This is again your instructor, Elizabeth Joy Serrano Quijano. So I'm excited to share to you today some basics about development communication. Okay, basic information. First, we will be going to define and also about the history of development communication, the definition as provided by experts and specialists in the field of development communication. Okay, so I hope that you will be able to understand and learn something from this session or from this lecture. And I'll be sharing my screen for my PowerPoint presentation. All right. Okay, so once again, this is our subject, Introduction to Development Communication. The subject code is CDC 111. Okay, so last meeting, I have assigned to you to research about at least three definitions of development communication. So now we'll be learning more about this topic or this subject. Okay. So, definitions of development communication. Development communication was first conceptually explained in 1975. Diba, na-discuss na ako last meeting that it was in the 1970s that it was operationally and conceptually explained. So, it was in 1975 that development communication was clearly defined by its forerunners or the the mother of development communication and other experts of development communication. So, according to Foster, developmental work, so the first definition is according to Foster. So, there has been a lot of definitions of development communication, but I will only tackle these few definitions from these experts. Okay, so according to Foster, development work is a successful diffusion of scientific knowledge and behavior to areas they had not existed before. So when we say diffusion, it means nag-spread out. Okay, scientific knowledge plus the behavior. So it's more on a combination of science, social sciences, and its branches, no, yung psychology, sociology. So it has diffused through this field of knowledge, this development communication. Then, development communication is characterized by its purposiveness, according to the International Encyclopedia of Communication. So, it's purposive and it aims to advance development. So, the aim of development communication is development and progress, especially among those who are marginalized or the poorest of the poor or the poor um, sector in our society. Then another definition of development communication. The end goal of development communication is a higher quality of life. Of course, when there's development, there is higher quality of life. There is progress and there is growth. This is achieved through immediate goals described as the expansion of opportunities. It means opportunities for all, not only for the elite, not for only for the educated, not only for the knowledgeable, not only for the learned, but of course for those, for all, for the people who need it the most, who need progress. Okay, these intermediate goals or immediate goals mean getting enough food, more income, social equality, education, and freedom. Of course, also our rights to our right to exercise our freedom. Okay, so this is according to the definition of Sears in 1969. Another definition, development communication is for the people. It employs mixed communication channels and media. Person to person or face to face mode and radio are most frequently used in development communication. Unlike in other communication field or courses or subjects, development communication is more on about it uses face-to-face communication, especially if we apply participatory communication. Okay, so unlike, for example, mass communication, this field uses talaga mass media, no? TV, yung social media, yung other forms of media, mass media, yung mga technology na ginagamit. But in development communication, yung pinaka ginagamit talaga is yung face-to-face communication at saka yung radio. Kasi yun yung pinaka-accessible, especially in rural areas. And yun yung mas pinakamadaling na naa-access ng mga tao na sinasabi natin those who are marginalized, na mga common people, no, the masses, yung masa. For example, the farmer, the fisher folk, the marginalized sector. So yun yung pinaka mabilis nilang na maa-access those kind of communication mode, yung person to person and radio, right? So next, instead of reporting politics, sex, crimes, development communication reports in-depth reports related to developments such as population explosion, fishing industry, forest denudation, housing issues, education, agriculture, land reform, science, and technology. So, even though we would not compare, no, mass communication and development communication or BA communication, but development communication is an isolated field. It is different field. It is distinguished because it focuses on um, progress and development. And it you must, if you are a development journalist, development practitioner, you must have the heart for the poor. So this course is dedicated solely for the poor. You know, it is laden with values, compassion, for the people, no? The ordinary people, the masses. So yun yung difference niya when it is being compared to other fields of communication. You do not gain profit, you do not gain yung sinasabi natin na commerce, no? Walang business sa development communication, but it is solely dedicated to help and uplift the lives of the poor. So it's like a charity course, or it's like giving more to our community. It's like dedicating our lives, our talents, our time to the community. So it's somehow related to social work, no? Serving the people, serving the people who need progress the most, who need development, who need growth, who need our help. And unlike yung nakikita natin na araw-araw sa TV, yung mga binabalita is about mga artista, politics, about mga issues na hindi naman relevant, no? For example, yung mga sa celebrities, mga sex and scandals, hindi naman relevant yan sa growth and development ng mga ordinaryong mamamayan or ng mga ordinaryong Pilipino. So, what we report in development communication, the stories that we give our focus, that we focus, are those that relate to development. Yun na nga, agriculture, population, gender equality, equality, freedom, rights, human rights, and land reform, science and technology, health. Yun yung issues na dapat nating diinan o dapat nating bigyan ng focus because yun yung nakakatulong, eh. Yun yung mga information na kailangan ng mga tao para umasenso, para umunlad. So, yun. So, I guess that was clear enough. Okay, next is communication versus communication. So, I always emphasize this because may mga term na mali eh. When you say, ano bang course mo? May nagsasabing developmental communication. Iba yung developmental at iba yung development. Meron din nagsasabing communications kasi plural. So, it's not. So, it's development communication. So, wag kayong magkakamali kung ano yung course niyo. Okay? So let us define communication and communications. So it's clear here in my presentation. Communication is the process, just like what I'm doing right now. I'm sharing information, sharing knowledge. So this is communication process, no? Yung pakikipag-usap nyo sa mga loved ones nyo, sa inyong parents, sa inyong mga nakakasama sa bahay everyday, that is communication. That is the process of communication. But when I say communications, yun na yung ginagamitan na ng technology, ng mga satellite, ng mass media, sa pag-share ng communication. So that's why we have the telecommunications. So mayroon yung S. Kasi ginagamitan natin siya ng technology. It does not mean na plural siya ng communication. So communications is different from communication. So again, the clue word, no, yung word na uh, kailangan nating bantayan, no, para ma-differentiate natin yung communication versus communications. Communication na walang S, ito ay proseso ng pagbibigay ng impormasyon, pagbibigay ng kaalaman o pakikinig. So, yun yung proseso. Then, communications, ito yung mga teknolohiya na ginagamit natin sa pakikipag-communicate. Yung mga signals, yung mga, meron tayong mga, ano ba yan? Yung, ano ba yan? Yung plates na nasa kalawakan, yung mga antena, yun. Yung mga ginagamit na technology sa pakikipag-communicate. Okay, so language. Ano ba yung language, ma'am? At saka yung communication. So, under ba ng language ang communication or under ng communication ang language? So, first, kailangan nating i-define din yung language. Kasi may nagsasabi that English ang development communication or communication is parang related lang siya sa English, no? Na major or English na mga courses. At hindi lang English, pati sa language. So, parang sinasabi nila na pareho lang. So, it's not the same. Although related or linked with each other, but it's not the same. Okay? So, language is a tool in communication. Pag sinasabi nating tool, it means ginagamit lang siya sa communication. Okay, so tool para makapag-communicate. Kailangan natin ng language. Sa communication naman, as explained kanina, it's a process of sharing or exchanging thoughts, ideas, concepts, and views, no, ng mga tao. So, lahat ba kahit mga animals ay may language? O lahat ba kahit mga animals ay may communication o kayang makipag-communicate? So, in its technical definition, communication, di ba, it's a process of sharing and receiving information. Communication, actually, ang mga, even the animals and plants, sinasabi ng mga experts, meron silang way of communication. You know, yung mga whales, merong mga waves na pinapadala yung mga radar or something na parang meron silang signals na pinapadala sa kapwa whales kahit na napakalayo ng mga whales sa isa't isa, no, nasa ocean. And then yung mga animals, yung dogs, meron silang communication mode or means, no, sa pagkikipag communicate sa ibang aso or even the monkeys, yung mga trees, meron daw silang mode na nakikipag-communicate sila sa isa't isa. So, communication is not specific or particular to human beings. So, pwedeng makipag-communicate kahit yung mga hayop. But the language, kasi yung language is napaka, ano siya, um, intricate. Napaka-complex ng language, no? Around the world, ilan ba yung mga languages around the world? In the Philippines, nasa 100 plus tayo or 120 plus ang ating ethno-linguistic na groups, yung mga grupo na meron talagang mga different languages. So yung language, hindi siya daw ginagamit ng mga animals because meron siyang qualifier para matawag natin siyang language. So paano ba natin ginagamit ang language? Ang language ay meron siyang grammar, may vocabulary, may phonology or yung sounds, no? Yung grammar, paano natin ginagamit yung language na may grammar? So meron siyang correct grammar or usage, may vocabulary, kung ano yung mga words na ginagamit natin, and meron siyang phonology. So since ayon sa mga experts, hindi naman nakakalika ng language ang mga hayop. So, walang language ang mga hayop, but they can communicate. Ang mga tao naman ay may language and they can also communicate. Okay, so I think that is clear. And then let us define development. Right, development. Ano ba yung development? Isa-isahin natin ito para mas klaro. Development involves change. So, kung walang change, walang development. Walang nagbabago. And then, it means new ways of doing things. According to Rao, it does not only mean physical changes, and it includes the advent of mass media, communication, literature, art, and it breaks tradition. So, for example, in your home, no, sa inyong mga bahay, um, gusto mo ng umasenso. You want progress. You want to improve your financial status. You want to improve in your um, you want to improve in yung mga resources. Gusto mong yumaman. Oh, for short, gusto mong yumaman. But then you keep on doing the things, no, that you are used to do. For example, 10 a.m. ka na gumigising, 24 hours ka na sa social media without earning anything. So, how would you expect, no, development in your family, in your home, if walang change, no, sa inyong mga habits, sa inyong discipline? So, development is like that. If we want development in our community, in our society, in our nation, in our country, if we want development, kailangan natin ng change. Gasgas na, di ba? Change is coming, change is here. Parang yun na yun talaga yung mga slogan ng mga politician. It's always change, no? Pero alam nyo kasi, the process of change is very complex, komplikado, difficult, and it needs a lot of sweat and blood para mayroong change and development. Okay, so according to Rao, development is not only physical change, no? Hindi porket merong magandang daan, merong concrete road sa inyong lugar, meron ng development. Hindi porket there are buildings, there are infrastructures in your community, may development na. So what about the mentality and the attitude of the people? Okay, maganda na yung daan, meron ng mga magagandang negosyong nagsisitayuan. But what about the attitude and mentality of the people? Hilahan, siraan, and of course, meron pang mga inggitera, tapos meron pang mga hindi naniniwala sa science, merong hindi naniniwala or mayroon pang naniniwala sa fake news. So we could not expect development, no? Yung kasi development is holistic. It does not only mean the physical development, but it also mean the changes in the mindset, in the psychology and sociology of the people. So when we say that there is development, makikita natin that there is also growth on the part of the people, no, in their understanding, no, about science. Mataas yung scientific literacy nila, mataas yung literacy rate ng mga tao. So yun, marami kasing indicators ang development. So hindi lang physical or buildings ang development. Meron ding ang ating pananaw or perspective sa buhay. So that can also be called development. So kung sa una, lain ka og batasan, mandaot ka, mainggit ka, palaway ka. So maybe if naa na development inyo, na changes sa imuha that you try to respect other people's opinion, that you try to respect differences among people, then that is development. That you go to school, you get educated. Yeah, that is also development. But 'di ba nga ingon nila that development or education of the mind, mas importante jud ang education of the heart. Ba useless ang na-educate lang ang imong mind but not your heart. So that is those are all parts of the development. Okay, and it breaks traditions. So if you want to improve, if you want growth or progress in your grades, okay, so but you still continue to waste your time in social media, you still continue to be relaxed, you still continue to be complacent, no, relax relax lang, wala ginawhimo, bala na, okay naman 75. So wala jud na growth. Or gusto jud ko makakuha og flat one, gusto jud ko makakuha og dako na grades. Pero wala man ka naningkamot, wala man ka nagabasa, wala ka nagatuon. 'Di ba? You don't participate in online classes, you don't ask, you don't communicate. So how would you expect development? 'Di ba? Personal development. So wala. So you have to break tradition, you have to break bad habits para na ay development. Okay? You have to break those attitudes nga naanda na nimo. Culture, diba? The culture of chismis, the culture of katapulan, the culture of mediocrity. Kanang mo, tama na na. Okay na na siya kay basta lalay masubmit. Diba? Mag okay lang eh. For compliance lang, makahatag lang ko ako ang project. Basta bisag pangit. Enough na. Okay? So, if you want development, either personally or in your community, so you have to break tradition. So do not vote for people nakabalo ka nga kaila ka sa ilaha ilang mga binuhatan nga dili sila maka hatag og growth and development sa imong community, because development na siya sa imong mga kamot, na siya sa atuang mga kamot if we really want change and if we really want development. Kasi pag merong development, we mag-grow ta as a person, we will come to appreciate more about literature, about art. 'Di ba kung naay development, mas natay time to read, mas natay time to appreciate the arts, no? Ma-appreciate na mo tanaw tag sine, mo basa tag libro. But of course, kung wala pa'y development, how would you read books? How would you go to theaters, no, mga sinihan? Kung kailangan pa nimo magtanom, kailangan nimo mangani, kailangan nimo mang mangisda para lang naipakaon sa imuhang pamilya. So, 'di ba? So wala jud tay time nga mo appreciate sa art, sa literature and the other entertaining fields, no, or mga aspects sa life. Wala jud tay time ana kung wala tay growth, wala kung naa pa ta sa poverty, 'di ba? So ikaw daw be gutom na kaayo ka, napa kay time magbasa, magsulat, magtanaw-tanaw drag salida, mag-Netflix and chill, nya gutom na kayo imong pamilya. So it's really important that we aim for development para mo-uplift ang ato ang quality of life, higher quality of life. Okay? Natay isa man gud sa ato ang ma-assess, no, wala pa jud tay development is that wala jud tay leisure time. Wala jud tay time mag-beach, no, murag pirmi lang trabaho, trabaho, trabaho because nag-apas nga dapat makakaon jud ta katulo sa isa ka adlaw. So if we really want development, dili pod siya enough nga kugihan lang ta because daghan kay taong kugihan is sa tinuod lang. There are a lot of people who are very hardworking. They dedicate themselves into a life of working. Pero wala gyapon asenso. Okay man ilang mindset, okay man ang ilahang attitude about work, kugihan, no? It's just that na mga factors na wala gi-allow nganong walay growth and progress ang ilang lives. For example, corrupt practices, no? Corrupt leaders. Sa pag-usaon nimo pagpaningkamot, If ang mga nakapalibot sa imo is kurakot, dili gyud ka mo asenso. So how do you fight that? Of course, you vote the right people, no? Especially na upcoming ng election, to those who can vote. So how do you fight that kanang mga ingon ana na barrier sa imong paglambo? You vote the right people. Diba? You exercise your right to vote the right people nga makatabang sa imuhang pag-asenso, makatabang sa pag-asenso sa imuhang community. Okay, so the new development context includes environment or sustainable development. So we cannot talk about development without discussing the importance of the environment and sustainable development. So unsa patakan na kadato ang atong community o ang atong nasod unya moabot ra day ng baha, mga linog, mga kalamidad. So wala gyud tay mahimo ana, back to zero ta. Sa pagwapo na kayo imong balay, unya gilinog, gibahaan, naguba ang mga gamit because of the natural calamity. Kaya wala man nato giampingan ng atong kinaiyahan. Okay? So it's very vital, especially for development communicators, development practitioners, to always consider kani nga mga issue, the environment and sustainable development. Then population growth. That is given. No, kung mag-overpopulate ang mga tao, wala gyapon progress. Gadagan kayo ang mouths to feed. And rural poverty, of course, development communication is dedicated to rural areas, no? Atong mga farmer, mga fisher po kay asa man kasagaran nana sila sa mga countryside or nasa mga bukid-bukid or nasa mga probinsya ang ato ang mga tabangunon, especially the fishermen, the folk, the people in agriculture sector. And even the IP, the indigenous people, na sila sa rural areas. So, dito ta kasagaran naga-focus sa mga rural na areas. And then health, of course, we in development communication, we have science communication. So we communicate to tong mga information na makatabang sa atoang health, no? For example, this pandemic, kailangan nato i-promote jud no ang vaccination, ang protocols nga para dili ta matakdan sa COVID or sa virus. So kailangan jud nato na nga kailangan nato na ma-inform ang mga tao ana nga mga aspeto sa health. Kung walay mo inform ana sa ilaha, padayon na gyapon sila motuo sa fake news na ang virus daw or ang vaccination 666 or makakos og mga dili maayo. Although yes, na ay side effects, but we choose to believe in the efficacy of the vaccines because there is science behind it. Kaysa sa magtututal ng mga 666, wala man ay science behind it, no? Mga gipakalat lang pud sa kung sino-sino, walay facts, walay basis. Daghan pa kayong mga fake news about vaccines para dili lang yun mabaksinan ang mga para dili makapavaksin ang mga tao. So they spread fear and ignorance instead of proper or kanang information unta nga sakto para mga tao na mismo ang mo decide. So when you give information, dili lang pwede nga na pro-vaccine ka, but you present the good side, the bad side, the pros and cons of an issue so that the people will decide fairly. No? Dili pa pud ta moingon na bias nato ang vaccination. Kay we also have to present what are the possible side effects of vaccination. That is just an example when it comes to reporting about health and when it comes to reporting about science and technology. So, ang science na yun na siya pros and cons. Diba? Na advantage and disadvantage. Okay, then women. Why is it that it's important to discuss about women and of course other gender, no, the LGBTQIA? No, why is it that they are part of development context? No, for the long time, daghan kay tag stereotypes or biases against women no in our society, daghan kayo like women dapat na lang sa balay, women mag-anak lang, magpalaga og bata. But in development, we push for inclusive development, growth and development. Inclusive meaning apil tanan, so dili lang dapat ang mga lalaki ang mag-decide for the community, for the society, but it should be inclusive. regardless of gender, babae man, lalaki, mabayot man, dapat na ay boses in our society para inclusive ang development. Kasi kung development lang, isa lang ka gender ang nagdala, lalaki lang puros, then that is not development, no? Ang atong leaders. So, kung ato ganing tan-awon karon more on daghan gyapon sa atong mga leaders puro mga lalaki. No, dili well represented ang matag gender types. No, when it comes to politics, when it comes to leadership, and ang uban because of our culture also no nga gina-discriminate, lain ang atong pagtan-aw sa mga uban na sex or gender, no, ang mga bayot ato ang or mga gay, ang mga lesbians gina-judge nato mo man yun na ang kultura sa Pilipino. So if we want development, we have to break that tradition, no. Respect jud ang pinaka-importante para na ay development. All right. So characteristics of development communication. This is very clear. Development communication is purposive. According to Chockley, development journalists have three tasks: to inform, interpret, and promote. Open the people's eyes for solutions. So, ang development communication, isa dyan sa iyang pinaka-purpose is to promote progress, growth, development, help the people, help the poor. Mao yun na siya ang pinaka-aim sa development communication. Help the marginalized sector. Yung mga napag-iiwanan sa lipunan ay kailangan nating tulungan sa pamamagitan ng pagbibigay ng mga tama, wastong impormasyon, at of course, pag-interpret ng mga information na hindi nila maintindihan. For example, merong mga researches diyan, napakagandang ideas ng mga scientists, ng mga expert, pero nakasulat sa wikang English. So, how do we interpret that? How do we make use of that information para maintindihan ng mga karaniwang tao? Siyempre, susulat natin yan in Filipino or in our local languages, in Cebuano, in Blaan, in Tagakaulo, para maintindihan ng mga ordinaryong tao. So yun. Isa lang yun sa mga marami nating dapat gawin bilang isang development practitioner or bilang development communicator. And naghahanap tayo ng solusyon. Hindi lang puro problema ang ibabalita o ire-report natin, but we seek solution for these social issues that are arising. Okay? Then, okay, from the word purposive, so meron siyang purpose. Okay? It's given. Then relevant. Sensationalism is a no-no. We go for stories such as economic trends, government services, agriculture, environment, science, and technology. So hindi na natin ibabalita sa development communication na si Judy Ann Santos ay napaso ng mantika while nagluluto. So walang ganyan sa development communication. So in development communication, we go for an in-depth story. Yung mas malalim, yung mas may relevance sa mga buhay ng mga ordinaryong tao. So, yun yung ibabalita or i-report natin o gagawa natin ng programa. Yun ang ginagawa ng isang development communicator or development practitioner. Government services. So, for example, meron palang scholarship ang ganitong agency ng government. For example, yung NCIP, lahat ng mga IP na qualified na mga estudyante, pwede pala maka-avail ng ganitong amount per semester, no? Meron pala silang 10,000 per year na pwede nilang i-avail sa National Commission on the Indigenous Peoples. So, paano yan maa-avail ng mga IP student if hindi nila alam? So, yun yung mga government services. Meron pang mga aid, mga assistance ang Department of Agriculture para sa mga farmers na hindi pa nila gaanong naa-avail kasi hindi nila alam. And that's what we are trying to do is to inform them of the services that they can freely avail from the government because that is their right and that is their 'di ba katungod freedom na meron silang right to know these services pero yun nga limited lang yung resources ng mga government agencies natin minsan hindi na ipapaabot at hindi nalalaman ng mga tao na meron pala ganitong services. So we need also to report that and to inform people about these government services that they can avail of. Then agriculture, environment, given na yan, science and technology, napakalaga na because this is technically science-based talaga and facts-based, data-based talaga ang development communication, no, ang kanyang discipline. And then, mass-oriented. Development communication is mass-oriented. Katulad ng sinasabi ko kanina na development communication is para talaga sa mga masa, para talaga sa mga ordinaryong mga tao, para sa mga magsasaka, mangingisda, mga napag-iiwanan sa lipunan. Para sa masa. Kasi mas marami ang masa kaysa sa mga mayayaman. Doon tayo sa masa. Then, scientific in its outlook, it is related to psychology, social science, sociology, and economics. So, scientific tayo. Dapat pag nagre-report tayo, merong mga in-depth analysis, merong research, yung facts na binibigay natin. So, hindi tayo basta-basta magbibigay ng information o ng report na walang kinalaman sa mga tao na gusto nating pagserbisyuhan, bigyan ng serbisyo. Then, technical subject matter oriented, we rely on date, information, knowledge, and research because scientific tayo. Meron tayong process. Sunod natin kung ano yung tama, kung ano yung facts, kung ano yung totoo. Okay? So, napaka-technical talaga niya. Hindi lang siya for fun, hindi lang siya for entertainment, 'di ba? Kasi sa ibang communication courses, meron talagang inform, influence, entertain, educate. Pero in development communication, mas napo-focus tayo doon sa inform, interpret, and promote. Diba? So, we rely on dates, information, knowledge, and research. And then, of course, last and finally, kikilalanin natin who is the person behind development communication. So it was Nora Cruz Cabral, the pioneer in the discipline of development communication in Asia, often called as the mother of development communication, giving birth to an academic discipline and training many scholars in that field. Okay, so it was only last year no na Nora Cruz Cabral passed away. Yung home university, yung doon talaga na conceptualize o isinilang ang development communication doon sa University of the Philippines, Los Baños, kung saan nagturo at naging head ng College of Development Communication si Ma'am Nora Cabral. So, during pa no, 1970s pa nag-start. Siya talaga yung nag-develop kung ano yung definition, ano yung characteristics, ano yung practice sa field ng development communication. Okay, so I guess that would be all for today. And I will again upload next week another lecture about introduction to development communication. So these are only the basics of development communication. So I hope that you've learned something today and prepare for a quiz this week. This week, next week. Okay, so I hope na namin natunan karon and just continue to be positive. Just continue learning. Positive in your outlook, ha, not in COVID. So thank you for listening. Okay, so that would be all. Goodbye and have a nice day.